world would not be the same. Two people laughed. Two people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be talking about my very own Mark II upper receiver. But before we get into that, if you want to help me out personally, you can, of course, like, share, and subscribe, as all that sort of stuff is free, and it does help me out quite a bit. On top of that, go ahead and comment literally anything down below, and there's also Subscribestar, which is basically a pro to a Patreon. You send me a couple bucks a month, and I send you some additional content. Now, on top of that, if you feel so inclined after this video, you can go ahead and also pick up one of these Mark II upper receivers that are my very own for $400 shipped from my website, which should be linked in the description down below. Full disclosure out of the way, these are of course my own personal Mark II upper receivers. I'm set up as a distributor for a wide variety of components, so these are all hand selected, hand assembled components by me, and if you purchase one of these upper receivers, I of course get the money from that. Now we're going to go ahead and start out with the muzzle device and then work our way back. This one, as you see it, is my personal Mark II, has a YHM QD flash hider. However, they will ship with an A1 style flash hider, which is a very, very simple flash hider. It has tines all the way around it, so it gives you a very good job not only of flash suppression but also of compensating the recoil straight back into your shoulder, versus the A2, which on certain guns can actually push the gun down a little bit too much. The A1 is more preferable for me. It doesn't need to be timed, of course, because it's symmetrical. So the A1 is what they're going to ship with. I believe it is a KAK Industries A1 style flash hider. Moving back from there, we of course have the barrel, which is half of the heart and soul of any upper receiver. And this one here, we went ahead and went with the Ballistic Advantage Performance Series, the 16-inch mid-length gun. Now I got 20 of these barrels from Ballistic Advantage. I pin gauged every single one of them at .076 on the gas port sizing, which is the exact same as the Roscoe you see behind me, which is currently suppressed. So it was between the Roscoe Bloodline 16 and the Ballistic Advantage Performance Series. However, I found a exceptional deal from the Ballistic Advantage ones, and Roscoe was taking too long to get me set up as a distributor, so I went with the Ballistic Advantage Performance Series. So what we have on the BA Performance Series is a true 5.56 chamber. It is a 1-in-7 twist. I believe the material they're using is 4150 chrome Moly-Vanadium steel, which is again a very high quality, very, very tough steel. On top of that, we do of course have M4 feed ramps in the barrel extension, as well as the extension and the chamber is nitrided. It is a very high quality nitride job that they do on this. The gas block journal is .750. It is machined very, very nicely. It feels like glass where the gas block goes over it, and it has been a very, very tight fit on all of the gas blocks that I've tested. Again, the gas port size of .076. is basically perfect for 16-inch mid-length guns. It ejects brass ammunition at anywhere from 330 to 4 o'clock, depending on the specific upper receiver, and ejects brass at around 430 to 5 o'clock. So it is a very, very well-gassed upper receiver. As you saw, all of the shooting in the intro, both suppressed and unsuppressed, was done with a standard carbine buffer and carbine spring. Nothing funky going on whatsoever, and it virtually has no recoil whatsoever. Now, moving on to the gas block and gas tube, they are both from Expo Arms. We have a 4140 gas block that is phosphated, so it's a fairly decent finish on it. It's a lot better than Parkerization in my opinion. We have a simple 2-set screw method on the bottom. On the gas block itself, it has a very tight fit on all of the barrels that I tested, which is all of them because I put them all together myself, of course. The gas block screws themselves are torqued down to 25 inch-pounds. On top of that, they also have a red Permatex Loctite, which is a semi-permanent thread locker applied that is also high temperature. Standard thread locker goes to about 300 degrees. This one here is rated up to 450 degrees. You can still reach that 450 degrees with an AR-15. It's just obviously a lot harder than it is to reach 300 degrees. Now, the handguard that I went with on the Mark II is very similar to the one on the Mark I. This is the 13.5-inch version versus the 10-inch version. The 13.5-inch version, it is of course 7-sided Mlock. This is their new Fire series, I believe, so it's their newest iteration of their handguards. It does come with anti-rotation tabs, which we'll get into just a minute, but I did have to unfortunately cut those off. On the top here, you can see it is very nicely ventilated throughout the 1913 Picatinny rail on top, as well as scalloped, so there's a lot of weight cut out of the handguard itself, which is quite nice. However, they did not skimp on the material itself. It is 6061 Type 3 hard coat anodized. No problems there whatsoever. In terms of durability on the rail material itself is a little bit thicker, so while it is not a thick handguard, you can definitely get your hand over it quite good, and I don't have particularly large hands. The strength and the durability is still there on these handguards, and it does give you exceptional ventilation and of course 7-sided M-Lock for all of the possible mounting options you could want. Now, moving back to the mounting hardware, this is real steel mounting hardware. I believe they're grade 8 bolts. These have blue Loctite applied to them from the factory, which is quite nice, and they are also torqued down sequentially, so going back and forth until the clamp is completely clamped down to 35 inch-pounds. Now, normally speaking, these would have anti-rotation tabs built in, just like they do on the Mark I upper receivers, but because of the Billet slick side upper receiver that we went with, unfortunately, right up here in the front, there's a little bit too much material here for those anti-rotation tabs to fit over nicely, so those did have to be ground down. However, one of the positives of that is that it does have a very flush, very nice meetup there in the front, so aesthetically I kind of like it. Now, generally speaking, I do like to see anti-rotation tabs, but it doesn't make a huge difference for most people, but just know that that is one of the downsides. Now, because the anti-rotation tabs were ground down by yours truly, you will notice the slightest sliver of where you can see the anodization removed, where of course I ground off the anti-rotation tabs. So if you are super OCD about that sort of thing, you might want to pick up a paint pen or something like that just to cover those up real nicely. Or if you paint a lot of your upper receivers like I do, you won't even notice it. Now, going back to one of probably what will be the most controversial part on the build is this NBS slick side upper receiver, which, as you can tell by being a slick side, has a very, very minute brass deflector and has no forward assist. Now, some people love the forward assist, some people absolutely hate the forward assist. Most people are completely indifferent. I tend to be in the indifferent category. As long as the barrel and bolt are high quality, then you shouldn't be needing a forward assist all that much, but of course having it doesn't really hurt, so I definitely get that argument as well. However, for more of a long gun, SPR, competition, whatever you want to use this gun for, I didn't feel it was needed, and I also kind of like the slick look to it. Now, because this is billet, there is a little bit of extra material here, so this is actually machined from a solid block rather than forged like a lot of your other upper receivers are. However, because of that, you have a little bit more material up front here, which makes it a little bit stronger at the barrel extension, which is good. However, of course, that means that I couldn't get the anti-rotation tabs on there, so a little bit of pro and cons there. And of course, there is no forward assist, which means that it can have this nice, sleek kind of billet look to it, which I quite like aesthetically, though again, if you're in the camp where you must have a forward assist, then you must pass on this upper receiver. Now, I tried to go as far back as I could on these upper receivers and see if NBS was actually machining these in-house, or if they were having somebody else contracted to machine it for them. What I did find was some old forum posts claiming that actually Stag Arms was the one actually machining these upper receivers. So I'm not sure who actually does the machining on them. However, the machining work, there is no marks or anything else like that whatsoever on them. The only marks you're going to see on them is from me test firing them. Now, a couple things that I should mention about the upper receiver and how the barrel is installed is that the first thing that I do with the upper receivers is that I lightly lap the face of the barrel extension. That way there, when the barrel is inserted, it has perfect contact all the way around to make sure that that pressure is concentric, and therefore giving you the highest chance of the highest possible accuracy. Now, on top of that, when the barrel is inserted and we're about to put on the barrel nut, what we do is we first season the threads with some Permatex Anti-Seize. It's a solution specifically developed for differing materials like the aluminum on the upper receiver and the steel of the barrel nut, because this is a nitrided steel barrel nut, very high quality. I prefer steel over aluminum on my barrel nut because it is the thing that holds the barrel to my gun, so I do again like that to be steel. So with the Permatex Anti-Seize lubricant applied, we then sequentially torqued down the barrel nut, starting at 25 foot-pounds, then 35 foot-pounds, and then finally at 50 foot-pounds, breaking it in between, making sure that those threads have made it up perfectly. And now that entire sequence of events is actually from when I did it on the Mark 1 upper receiver, and you guys commented about how I should improve that in future. So that is how we did it on all of the Mark 2 upper receivers. So again, we lap the face of the upper receiver, making sure that the barrel fit is perfectly concentric. Then we season the threads and torque down sequentially, starting at 25, 35, and then finally 50 foot-pounds on the barrel nut to make sure that that barrel is perfectly seated. The threads are very well mated up together and making it possible to disassemble it in the future, but that it's torqued down properly each and every time. Now, the dust cover on the upper receiver is actually a BCM dust cover, and again on that, I'm not sure if that's something they actually machine in-house or if that's something that they have come from somebody else. Now, moving on from there, we have a standard 7075 T6 charging handle, just a very standard Mil-Spec charging handle. Again, in my last video, I'm not a big fan of aftermarket oversized charging handles, as with an AR-15 you really shouldn't be using the charging handle all that much to begin with, so it is something people like to see bigger, nicer charging handles. However, for me it is the most expensive upgrade with the smallest amount of actual benefit. The second half of the heart and soul of any AR-15 upper receiver group is of course going to be the bolt carrier. Now, the bolt carrier that we used on the Mark 1 was one of the best value bolt carrier groups on the market that does an exceptional job. It's the Toolcraft, the Carpenter 158 bolt with chrome lined carrier and key. Exceptional bolt, exceptional value. They do a very, very good job. Now, on this one here, we went with basically a bolt with identical specifications from AO Precision. However, instead of being phosphate and chrome, this one here is a solid nitride job. Now, AO Precision makes a lot of components for military contracts, for machine guns and other parts. Suffice it to say that they are very good at what they do. Now, this is a very Mil-Spec style bolt carrier group. We have a 8620 carrier, which is very standard, and a Carpenter 158 bolt. The bolt itself is also MPI tested as well as HPT tested. What that means is that they magnetically particle inspect every single bolt to make sure that there are no invisible imperfections. And on top of that, it's also high pressure tested with a, I forget the exact designation, but it's a very high pressure round, an overpressure round, to check and make sure that there are no defects within the bolt itself. So the materials that they use are very standard, very high quality. The nitride job is very good. Now, one thing that I will say about the AO Precision carrier is that the carrier itself does have a little bit more machining marks than I've seen on other bolt carrier groups in a similar price on the non-load bearing surfaces. The load bearing surfaces on it are very nicely machined, and the bore and the gas key are very nice, very smooth on the inside, has a very good nitride finish. But again, on the non-load bearing surfaces like here and on the top of the gas key, there's a little bit more machining marks than I've seen on other bolts. However, again, it has not affected function whatsoever. Now, talking about the gas key itself, we do have true grade 8 fasteners that are staked to Mil-Spec. On top of that, you have a Permatex gasket sealer installed to really lock in all of the gases that are flowing in between your gas key down to your gas rings. Now, the carrier to bolt fit is very, very tight. Just like I noted on the Toolcraft bolt carrier groups, there is no wobble left or right whatsoever between the bolt and the carrier, and this is after about 1,000 rounds without cleaning half of that suppressor. So on this carrier. So while it is not the flashiest, nicest carrier on the market, it does everything exceptionally well. It has very strong extractor springs with a Vuitton O-ring, so it does have that enhanced O-ring in there to give it that better extraction pressure. On top of that, we do have a very strong ejector pin. Again, it's not very flashy and it doesn't do anything crazy, but it does do its job every time. So now that we're done with all of that, we can go ahead and talk about the testing that I've done on this specific Mark II upper receiver. So I've actually had most of these components for some time. The last piece of the puzzle I was waiting for was the barrel on these guys. Again, I was originally going to go with Roscoe, and then I got the Ballistic Advantage Performance Series, and again, they're basically identical in every way. But I got these on a Friday and I slapped one together for a competition on Saturday. At the competition it performed perfectly, and of course in the testing, because I had to take it out and zero it, this was the configuration I had it for the competition minus the Holosun, which was not quite in yet, which is a very good magnifier. We'll go over the setup in just a minute. But basically at the competition I scored 48 out of 48 possible points and was one of the 2 or 3 people to actually pass the pass-fail stage. And again, the upper receiver performed flawlessly. This is one of the softest shooting upper receivers that I've played around with to date. If you watch the slow-mo footage that I'm about to show you, it basically has no recoil with or without a suppressor. It is a very, very soft shooting gun. And now I'm not sure if that's just the proper gas port sizing, which is .076, which I've had 3 other guns, 16-inch mid-length guns, that also have a .076 gas port size on their barrel, which is, again, in my opinion, that is the proper size. If you have a 16-inch mid-length gun, it probably should be .076. You can tune it a little bit softer for more of a race gun-like feel, but if you're going to do that, you might as well throw on an adjustable gas block. Now, on the Mark II upper receivers, I would not recommend putting on an adjustable gas block, as these shoot extremely smooth as they ship. And again, I've hand-tested every single one of these, and they've all been exceptionally smooth. If you did want to get a slightly slower recoil impulse, you could, of course, always add a heavier buffer in the back or a slightly stronger spring. Play around with that and feel what is the best for you. But again, all the shooting and testing that I'm going to show you guys was with a carbine spring and carbine buffer, so that is just a very standard, very simple setup, nothing crazy going on to reduce the recoil or like trick you guys into something else. It is actually just a very pleasantly gassed system that doesn't need you to do anything else to it. Again, these are ready to go from the box. Now, on top of being a properly gassed barrel and a very, very high quality barrel, it is also very accurate. Now, Ballistic Advantage has a 1 MOA guaranteed on their 16-inch Performance Series barrels, and I will back that up as well. If you can't get 1 MOA with good match loads, 5-round groups, 3-round groups, whatever you can do, if you can't get 1 MOA out of it, you can go ahead and send it back to me. Now, on top of that, I also did accuracy testing with it. Now, personally, I don't have a lot of match loads on hand. I had some 69 grain PPU match ammunition, not really good ammunition, and then I had some 77 grain S&B, their hollow point boat tail match ammunition, and that was really all I had. I shot out all of my IMI 77 grain Razor Core, which was doing really, really well. It shoots sub MOA in all of my Roscoe stuff, but on this barrel, what I was able to get out of it was basically 1 MOA all day long with the match ammunitions, and about 1.5 to 3 MOA with like Wolf and M193, which is again exceptional ammunition. On top of that, I've taken this out to 300 yards, and as you would imagine, it is an absolute laser beam. There is no problems whatsoever. If you needed to take a 5.56 gun out to 600 or 700 yards, this would be an excellent choice to do it with. So even for my own personal shootings, I don't have any complaints about the Ballistic Advantage barrel whatsoever. Very well gassed, very accurate, combined with one of my favorite 13.5-inch handguards. I've had these handguards on a lot of my personal rifles that you guys have seen in the past if you go back and watch some older videos. One of my favorite handguards. It's probably the best quote-unquote budget style handguard, even though they're not that cheap of handguards. The no frills, very high quality bolt carrier group means that you get a very reliable, very accurate, very fun to shoot, very pleasant gun that can flex into a lot of roles. A 16-inch AR-15 can do just about everything. You can do close quarters competitions with it. You can take it out to 600-700 yards. There's really a huge amount of flexibility with the 16-inch gun. You get great velocity, great terminal ballistics, again, depending on what you want to do with it. Great for target, great for hunting, great for Again, literally everything. The only thing, you might not want to do is super, super close quarters, truck gun, vehicles, CQB, whatever you can think of in your head. But again, for most people, a 16-inch gun is going to be the most useful and the most versatile, which is why I wanted to do something a little bit more traditional, and again, more legal in more places as well, which is just an added benefit of having that longer overall length. So that's about it for my overview of the Mark II upper receiver. If you want to go ahead and check out all of the nitty-gritty details, go ahead and check out the description on my website. They will all be posted on there. But that is about it for the video, guys. Let me know what you guys think of the Mark II upper receiver in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.